She's the S.H.I.E.L.D. accountant who became the vice president of the Dark Avengers. We're talking about Victoria Hand. Hi, I'm Nando, and in this series, pick a character from Marvel Comics. We talk about their backstory, their power set, their personality, and we give you some reading recommendations. This week, we're talking about a very specific character from a book that is very near and dear to my heart. It's Victoria Hand from the Dark Avengers book. She first appears as Norman Osborn's assistant in Invincible Iron Man Volume 2, Issue 8. Although that is not going to be the reading recommendation for her, because only a few issues later, Victoria Hand would be recruited by Norman Osborne to be his second in command at the Dark Avengers. And that is reading recommendation number 1, Dark Avengers Volume 1, Issue 1. It's written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Mike Deodato Jr., Rain Barreto, and Corey Petit. Now, her origin gets expanded upon a little bit, and I want to say Dark Avengers 11, but basically everything you need to know about Victoria Hand comes in a conversation between herself and Norman Osborne. Norman Osborne, by the way, has basically just taken over everything. He was in charge of the Thunderbolts in the wake of the Superhuman Registration Act, and Norman was able to use that group as a sort of police force to arrest superheroes that were disobeying the law, that were unregistered. And then, after the Skrull invasion, Norman Osborne killed the Skrull Queen, Varanki, on TV, and was put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he renamed Hammer. But Norman Osborne is a character that famously does not have a ton of allies, especially at this point in his career. He's already been the Green Goblin, he has already been disgraced. And Norman did a lot of work to reclaim his identity and turn the name of Norman Osborn into something that is not associated exclusively with a homicidal maniac who wants to kill Spider-Man. But he's not like a Magneto where he has this standard stable of enforcer-type villains that work under him. So Norman Osborn needs to form a team that is going to be his new Avengers that we will call the Dark Avengers. On that team will be some of his Thunderbolts, Moonstone and Matt Gargan. Venom poses Miss Marvel and Spider-Man. Bullseye poses as Hawkeye. Dakin poses as Wolverine, and then Ares, Novar, aka Marvel Boy, and the Sentry all join. And Norman Osborn is not only in charge of this team, but unlike when he was in charge of the Thunderbolts, this time Norman is leading the team from the field as the Iron Patriot, wearing a repainted Iron Man armor. But Norman Osborn knows he can't really trust this team. Some of them are complete sociopaths, some of them are kinda dumb. Ares is a god who thinks he's better than everyone. Moonstone is constantly trying to manipulate everybody, including Norman. So he needs someone else to be in charge here. Someone to run the team if he ever goes down, and someone who he can trust to take care of things if he's busy. So he recruits a character named Victoria Hand. We will learn she was a S.H.I.E.L.D. accountant who disagreed with how Nick Fury and Iron Man were dealing with terrorism, and this was a book from the 2000s, so all the books had something to say about terrorism. Victoria Hand specifically didn't think they were doing enough, so she publicly spoke out and got reassigned, demoted. Her girlfriend left her. Victoria Hand was forced to relocate, and all this was because of one of the most interesting things about Victoria Hand, which is she really sticks with her principles. Even if those principles are wrong or she's working with someone who everybody says is a bad guy, if she believes that person or policy is the best thing for America and keeping everyone safe, it's the one she's going to support. So Osborn realizes that this is a valuable trait, not necessarily loyalty, although it can manifest as loyalty, but just moral certainty. This idea that if she believes in his mission, Victoria Hand will be able to carry it out. And she really doesn't like the Avengers, especially Iron Man and everybody connected with S.H.I.E.L.D. So she doesn't have quite the same axe to grind that Norman Osborn has against all of the superheroes that have publicly disgraced him, but she is happy to see this organization get taken down. So Norman Osborn recruits her, basically says, you're going to be second in command, you're going to make a lot of money, it's a very demanding job, you're not going to have any time off, but you're going to have more authority than you have ever had before. And Victoria Hand says, yeah, okay, let's do this. And this all happens in Dark Avengers Volume 1, Issue 1. It's worth noting, obviously, the main distinguishing feature of Victoria Hand is this magenta stripe in her hair. It's very helpful for characterizing her as somewhat rebellious, and also just makes it easy to find her in a crowd. And she executes Norman's vision, and she does so very efficiently. Victoria Hand knows that all of these superheroes she's working with are different levels of insane. And besides maybe Akihiro, at this point I can't remember where we were with him. If he was turning good, but all the rest of them are cool with killing someone they don't like or if it's inconvenient. So one of the things that Victoria Hand does very early on working with this team is assert herself over characters like Moonstone who think they can do whatever they want and plan to manipulate her and plan to go over her head, especially because Moonstone served a similar role on the Thunderbolts. She was Norman Osborn's second in command, but because she tried to manipulate him, he didn't trust her enough for her to take this role on the Avengers. So I think that's really interesting about Victoria Hand. She does not have superpowers. she's probably an above average fighter compared to your average SHIELD agent, but more than anything else, she is confident and she is organized. And those are her superpowers. And Victoria Hand, she gets in a lot of disagreements with the members of the Dark Avengers, but she can call all of them on their bullshit, and they all have plenty of bullshit to be called on. She's even able to ground Norman Osborne from a mission because she believes he's too tired, because he absolutely is. And she doesn't know this, although I'm sure she assumes it. He's kind of starting to go goblin insane. Something similar happens in issue 12, which I will say is the second reading recommendation for Victoria Hand. This one is also written by Brian Michael Bendis, with art by Mike Deodato Jr., Greg Horn, Rain Barreto, and Corey Petit. And this is a great Victoria Hand book, because at this point, all the members of the New Avengers have been completely dispatched by the Molecule Man, and Victoria Hand is in charge. And she comes up with a plan that none of the rest of them would, which is to surrender to the Molecule Man, because A, he's the Molecule Man, he can do whatever he wants, and B, that'll give her a chance to talk to him, figure out what he's thinking. And Victoria Hand is able to kind of diplomacy her way through this situation. The whole thing just basically ends because Sentry realizes that he's also kind of the Molecule Man, but Victoria Hand in this moment goes toe-to-toe with the supervillain. And then later in the book, Victoria Hand calls out Norman Osborne again, this time saying, clearly you are doing Green Goblin stuff. I'm not here to be your puppet. I want to help you. And that means me telling you right now, you need to get professional help or you're going to ruin everything. And Norman Osborne really respects this. And he agrees to get the best psychiatric help that's available, as long as it's not Moonstone. Now, this is a little too late, and he does eventually lose control during the siege event, and the Dark Avengers are disassembled. And Captain America questions Victoria Hand, because as he puts it, he understands why everybody else is on this team. Like, Norman Osborne wanted all the scariest, toughest, most powerful guys. Sure, but he doesn't understand what she was doing there. And he wants to figure out, is she evil? Is she not that bright? Does she have some other secret agenda? And she basically explains, no, I just believed in Norman Osborne. A lot of people believed in Norman Osborne, and I wanted to use this power he was offering me to help make the world a better place. And Captain America basically says, I hate Norman Osborne. I will never agree with anybody who joins up with him, but you're not fired because you're a patriot, and I respect you. And now you work for the regular Avengers. And Victoria Hand, to her great surprise, is not fired. Which brings us to what I think is her third important issue. This is New Avengers Volume 2, Issue 1. It's written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Stuart Immonen, Wade Von Grawbadger, Laura Martin, and Chris Eliopoulos. And this is a team led by Luke Cage, made up of Avengers that are probably mostly familiar. Characters like Spider-Man, The Thing, Wolverine, Miss Marvel. And when they get to the Avengers Mansion to start their first day of Avengering, they find Victoria Hand. And they're all pretty surprised by this. They say, wait, aren't you a bad guy? You work for Norman Osborne. You're not going to be part of our team. And she says, yeah, I didn't think I'd be here either, but Captain America thinks I should be part of this. So I'm going to be your liaison to S.H.I.E.L.D. And because Luke Cage specifically respects Captain America more than anything, he does not immediately fire her, even though his wife very much hates Victoria Hand, because minutes before she pointed a gun at them while Jessica Jones was holding their baby. And then Luke Cage follows up and asks her, why do you want to be on this team in the first place? Like, you hate all of us. You just got done with an Avengers team that ruined your reputation. Why do it again? And Victoria Hand basically says, like, I want to be there because I disagree with you people. I think you need someone like me with that point of view who's going to tell you no when you're about to make a mistake. And Captain America agrees with me, so I should be on this team. And Luke Cage is basically like, yeah, that's good enough for me. So Victoria Hand is now working with the New Avengers. And some of them don't like her, specifically Jessica Jones, although she gets over it, and Spider-Man because she was associated with Norman Osborn, although he gets over it. And for a while, Victoria Hand works out. She helps the New Avengers fight the Revengers, the forces of the Serpent. But it gets tricky because it's revealed that she's secretly a double agent. And the team is very mad. They feel very stupid because, of course, she was. They thought she was the whole time. Then they find out that she is secretly a triple agent working for Captain America. It's kind of unnecessarily complicated, but basically she's still a good guy. Now, Victoria Hand would go on to die at the end of this run. From the beginning of this New Avengers story, there was a lot of stuff going on with Doctor Strange, and there's a big conflict with Daniel Drum, and Daniel possesses Victoria Hand. He starts possessing different members of the New Avengers. Victoria Hand and Doctor Strange go to the astral plane, and Daniel Drum there tears Victoria's astral heart from her body, which kills her. She gets a memorial statue next to the other fallen heroes. Captain America says she was one of us. And that New Avengers 32, as far as I can tell, is the last appearance of Victoria Hand, which I think is another reason why people people look back on her so fondly is because she existed for this very specific moment in comics, served a very specific purpose, was very memorable, and then left. Didn't overstay her welcome, wasn't involved in a million stories that made her too complicated to understand. Like I said, she had no superpowers. She's frequently seen carrying a humongous gun, and sometimes she wears purple battle armor, although a lot of the time she's just in a suit. And she is respected by heroes and villains alike for her straight-talking attitude and her general competence, even though a lot of them don't agree with her on everything. If you haven't read the comics, the other place you may have seen Victoria Hand is she showed up in the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is back before the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D., where S.H.I.E.L.D. was like an organization, and she came in to work with Coulson. She was clearly very smart, also suspicious of Coulson, and then she was killed. Ward kills her near the very end of season 1. It's a big surprise because it kind of seemed like this character was going to be important, but she got a surprise death. Played by Saffron Burrows. And one other thing I learned recently, character's lesbian. That we knew. But one thing that I didn't learn until I was researching this video, she was going to have a relationship with Isabel Hartley, a character played by Lucy Lawless, who was introduced later in the series. But apparently, the producers of the show were worried that if they introduced the first lesbian character into the MCU and then immediately killed her, and then did the same with her girlfriend later, which is what eventually happens to Hartley, there would be a lot of backlash, which makes sense. Unfortunately, that means they just kind of wrote it out. Although there is a line in the series later that alludes to a relationship. So these two characters did know each other. And we are talking about Victoria this week because she's just been introduced into the collectible card game Marvel Snap. In Marvel Snap, Victoria Hand is a 2-cost 3 power. With the ongoing ability, your cards that were created in your hand have +2 power. So this is like a perfect power set for this card. First of all, she plays into the shield archetype. But instead of recruiting cards like most of the other S.H.I.E.L.D. cards, she empowers the cards that are already recruited because she's a good manager. So obviously she's going to work well with all of the S.H.I.E.L.D. cards, Sharon Carter, Coulson, Nick Fury, Val, the Helicarrier, the Quinjet, and Iron Patriot. She's also going to work well with Moonstone, another member of the Dark Avengers who we'll talk about next video, because she has an ongoing ability. But she's also going to buff cards that are created like the way that Swarms are created, or the way that Moon Girl creates extra cards. All of those cards are going to get more power from Victoria Hand. She's also going to be really good with cards like Kate Bishop, Penny Parker, Snowguard, cards that make cards that go into your hand. So basically, as long as you get more than 2 cards in your hand, she's above rate, and that's something that is very easy to do. The other thing that's fun about this is her name is Hand, and cards created in your hand are more powerful because of her. Now, I don't think this is why they did this, or at least I don't think this is the only reason, but I do think that's kind of fun. She's Victoria Hand, so cards from your hand get more power. Overall, I'm very excited about this card. As you can tell, I'm a fan of the character. She only has 2 variants that I can find online. There's the base art by Ryan Kennard and Eduardo Mello that I really like. They gave her big gun. That pose is something that's kind of familiar from, I think, New Avengers 4, where she is just shooting her gun out the front door. And then I really like the Panda Art Studio Spotlight Cache just because it's more casual, but she still has the humongous gun. And I do think it's kind of interesting. In this art, it seems like she has either killed or fought some S.H.I.E.L.D. agents because she is very casually walking away from a bunch of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who seem to be maybe dead. So I think that's fun. Yeah, overall, very good card. So that's Victoria. Thank you, Bernardo Tellers, for helping me write these. And next week, we're going to talk about one of my favorites here, Moonstone. Speaking of things that are my favorite, let's talk about this video's sponsor, Nebula. You know Nebula, it is a subscription streaming service that I and a bunch of YouTubers helped to create. It focuses on giving the creators more power to make the cool stuff that you guys already like and giving you guys a better experience for watching it. That means all my videos go up ad-free. Some of them are early. The Nando V Movies videos are early. The Nando Cut videos are like a little early, but they're not as early because they're like a thing that happened yesterday usually. We curate different video lists based on what people are talking about. So if you're watching that new Dune show, for example, and you want to watch some videos about Dune, we've got a bunch of those. We make that really easy to find. You can just watch that. We also have Nebula Originals. So these are all kinds of things. We've got like a pro shoot of a play by Abigail Thorne. Patrick Willems has made a Christmas special. His full-length feature film about an evil coconut. He's got a new short film coming out with a cast full of actors like Zach Cherry, who fans of this channel, I mean, you know him from so many things. Perhaps he has been in Severance. You love Severance, Fallout, but I mean, realistically, a good portion of you know him as the guy who tells Spider-Man to do a flip, or the guy who was taping the Shang-Chi fight. But either way, he is in this, and that is something you can only watch on Nebula. Tom Nichols just made a documentary about gerontocracy, about how boomers have changed the world and government, and is it good, or is it even really a thing? A subject that has only gotten more relevant since this documentary came out. We have so many other cool things I think you guys are going to love. You'll find out about them soon. And I always say, a year of Nebula is a steal at $5 a month or $60 a year. But if you use the code TheNandoCut at checkout, you can get a year of Nebula for $36. It's a great deal. Check it out. Go to go.nebula.tv/TheNandoCut. Use the code TheNandoCut at checkout. I guarantee you'll find something cool you're going to like. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.